Welcome to the deep dive. There's so many pieces of the internet that work tirelessly behind the scenes. Often invisible, yet absolutely critical.
Right. Things you don't think about until they break.
Exactly. And the domain name system, DNS, is fundamentally one of them. It's the backbone of, well, pretty much every digital interaction, especially for your company's external presence, what the world sees of you.
Absolutely essential.
But here's the rub. Despite its foundational role, DNS is a prime, often overlooked target for cyber attacks.
A really attractive target, unfortunately.
Which makes its security an absolute imperative for cybersecurity experts, IT directors, CIOs, and CISOs like you listening.
Definitely.
So our mission today is to truly understand DNS security extensions, or DNSSEC. We're aiming to give you a shortcut, sort of, to understanding why DNSSEC isn't just a nice-to-have, but really an essential layer of defense.
A necessary layer, yeah.
For your organization's public-facing services. It's about protecting against malicious redirection and ensuring the integrity of your data, basically safeguarding your operations and, critically, your reputation.
That reputation piece is huge.
So what can you expect from this deep dive? We'll start not with the technical how, but maybe with the more visceral why.
The consequences.
Right. We'll look at real-world incidents to illustrate the tangible and often painful risks when DNSSEC isn't in place. Then we'll peel back the layers to understand the core mechanics. Why is DNSSEC so fundamentally important?
Get into the weeds a bit.
Yeah, exploring specific exploits it prevents. Then we'll look at practical solutions that automate this critical defense. We'll touch on examples like Signal Labs.
Making it manageable.
And ultimately reinforce why signing your external zones is absolutely vital for public validation and trust in today's digital landscape. Ready to dig in?
Let's do it.
Okay, before we get into the technical mechanics, let's maybe confront the very real, often devastating impact when DNSSEC is absent.
Yeah, these aren't just theories.
No, these are costly, real-world compromises that have directly affected businesses and their users.
Let's kick things off with a pretty stark example. The MyOtherWallet incident back in 2018. Users lost over $150,000 in crypto. Can you walk us through what happened there and what it really exposed about DNS vulnerabilities?
Precisely. What's striking about MyOtherWallet is how it revealed a classic DNS spoofing attack. Basically, users were redirected to these very sophisticated phishing sites.
Because their DNS queries were hijacked.
Effectively, yeah. Their lookup sent them to the wrong place.
Yeah.
And the core issue was a glaring lack of DNSSEC enforcement on the service's domain.
So no validation.
Right. Had DNSSEC been fully deployed, and ideally combined with other layers like HTTPS and strong certificate pinning, it could have fundamentally prevented the acceptance of those forged DNS responses.
Would have blocked the bad addresses.
Exactly. Protecting users from being redirected to those malicious domains. It's a powerful lesson in how an attack at the DNS level can just completely undermine user trust, expose sensitive data, and cause serious reputational damage for the provider.
Absolutely. Severe damage.
And this wasn't some isolated thing, right? The DNS espionage attacks, hitting even major infrastructure like NetNod between 2018 and 2019, showed a similar vulnerability.
A different vector, but related risks.
Attackers actually got into registrar accounts to temporarily disable DNSSEC protections. Once that was down, they could then get unauthorized SSL certificates.
Which opens the door for man-in-the-middle attacks.
Right, facilitating attacks on mail servers in this case. What did those attacks reveal about DNSSEC's actual protective power?
Well, this incident starkly illustrates DNSSEC's protective efficacy, even when other things fail. What was truly fascinating was that, crucially, DNSSEC protected internal email network servers. They remained resilient during the exact same attack window.
So the protected parts held up.
They held up, and there were even documented instances where the attacker surprisingly neglected to disable DNSSEC on some specific domains.
An oversight.
Seems like it. And this oversight actually thwarted further exploitation, unequivocally proving DNSSEC's barrier effect when it's properly in place and configured. It shows that even when attackers get deep access, DNSSEC provides a critical additional hurdle.
Makes it harder for them.
Significantly harder.
Okay, and then there was the Sea Turtle campaign. That targeted Dutch telecom and IT firms between 2017 and 2020. This group systematically compromised multiple DNS registrars and registries to stealthily redirect traffic and harvest credentials. The scale of that was alarming.
It really was. And this raises an important question for organizations. Why did this campaign thrive? How was it so successful for so long?
What was the weakness?
It largely succeeded due to poor DNS hygiene, just basic blocking and tackling sometimes, but specifically a distinct lack of DNSSEC enforcement.
Again, DNSSEC wasn't there or wasn't enforced.
Exactly. For organizations that had DNSSEC validation in place, the attackers would have faced significant barriers to successfully manipulating those DNS records. This really demonstrates DNSSEC's inherent potential to mitigate even registrar-level compromises.
Even if the registrar itself is breached.
Yes. It shows how it can be a critical line of defense even when an attacker gains deep access to the systems managing the domain registrations themselves.
Okay, so we've seen the pretty devastating impact. But for you listening, as cybersecurity experts and IT leaders, what is DNSSEC fundamentally? How exactly does it achieve this origin authentication and data integrity we keep mentioning?
Right, let's get into that.
How does it work under the hood to stop these attacks?
Okay, the core insight with DNSSEC is this. Think of it as the internet's digital notary.
A notary, okay.
Every time you ask for a website's address, DNSSEC acts as a kind of guarantee, verifying that the address you receive is not only genuine, but hasn't been tampered with in transit.
So you know you're going to the right place.
It ensures what you think you're connecting to is actually what you were connecting to. Now, to understand how it provides this critical protection, it introduces a chain of trust.
A chain?
Yeah, a chain of trust that extends all the way from the DNS root zone, the very top, down to individual domains through the use of digital signatures.
Okay, digital signatures like for secure email.
Similar concept, yeah. Essentially, domain owners sign their DNS data with private cryptographic keys, and then the corresponding public keys are published right there in the DNS system.
So the keys are the public.
The public keys are, yes. Resolvers, the servers, looking up the names, if they're configured for DNSSEC validation, they use these public keys to check the digital signatures.
Verifying the signature.
Exactly. Verifying that the DNS data they receive is authentic and hasn't been tampered with. This chain of trust is further established through something called delegation signer, or DS records.
DS records.
Right. They live in the parent zones, and they basically link a child zone's public key, their DNSSEC, to its parent zone. Think of it like a series of notarized documents, each one verifying the authenticity of the next one down the line.
Got it. A verifiable chain from the root down.
Precisely.
And because of this whole mechanism, DNSSEC effectively prevents several known exploits. It stops DNS spoofing and cache poisoning, right? Where attackers inject forged DNS responses or corrupt caching resolvers.
Correct. With DNSSEC, only authentic, untampered data gets accepted by validating resolvers.
It also thwarts man-in-the-middle attacks on DNS by validating the legitimacy of the DNS response itself. And importantly, it provides authenticated denial of existence. Can you quickly explain what that means for our listeners?
Absolutely. Authenticated denial of existence is, it's actually pretty crucial. Imagine trying to access your critical internal sales dashboard, or maybe your public-facing e-commerce site.
Something important.
Right. And your system suddenly gets told, nope, doesn't exist by some malicious actor trying to disrupt things.
Like a denial of service.
It's a subtle but effective form of service denial. DNSSEC can stop that by cryptographically proving that a domain truly does not exist, or conversely, proving that a legitimate domain does exist. It prevents those false negatives.
So it confirms non-existence too. Interesting.
Yeah. Now, it's vital to remember a key distinction here.
Okay.
DNSSEC does not encrypt the DNS queries themselves.
Ah, okay. So it's not like DOH or DOT.
Exactly. Unlike protocols such as DNS over HTTPS, DOAs, or DNS over TLS, DOT, which focus on confidentiality, on hiding the query, DNSSEC's immense power lies specifically in ensuring that the received DNS data hasn't been altered in transit and truly originates from the legitimate source.
Integrity and authenticity.
It's all about integrity and authenticity, not the privacy of the query itself.
That's a really crucial clarification. So validating the data, not hiding the request itself. But, given these powerful benefits, it sounds great, but it's not a magic bullet, is it?
No, definitely not.
What are some of the practical limitations or challenges that CSOs and IT directors should be aware of when they're thinking about DNSSEC?
That's an excellent point. It's important to have a balanced view. While it's powerful, DNSSEC does have limitations. As we just mentioned, it doesn't encrypt queries, which means some metadata, like what sites you're visiting, can still potentially be exposed.
Privacy concerns still exist elsewhere.
Right. It can also theoretically be circumvented by registrar or authoritative DNS provider compromises if the attackers manage to actually control or disable the keys themselves. Although, as we saw with DNSpionage, it still raises the bar significantly, makes it much harder.
It's still a hurdle.
A big one. Probably a more common issue, honestly, is the risk of domain unreachability due to misconfiguration.
You mess it up and your site goes offline.
Potentially, yes. It can cause significant outages if it's not handled with extreme care during deployment and key rollovers. That scares people, understandably. And finally, for the protection to be truly end-to-end, the client-side DNS resolvers think your laptop, your phone, the resolver your ISP uses, they must actively validate DNSSEC.
The end user side has to check it.
Correct. And frankly, many consumer devices and even some enterprise resolvers still lack this by default or don't have it enabled. So end users aren't always automatically protected, even if your zone is signed perfectly.
So it's not a silver bullet. And yeah, misconfiguration sounds like it could cause real headaches, even outages. Given those risks and the complexity we've sort of hinted at, why aren't more organizations adopting it? I mean, what's the biggest barrier you see out there in the field, and how are companies starting to address that?
Yeah, that's kind of the million-dollar question, isn't it? Historically, I think the sheer complexity of manual DNSSEC implementation and especially the ongoing key management has been a huge barrier to adoption.
The operational overhead.
Exactly. The key rollovers, managing the trust anchors correctly, avoiding those misconfigurations we talked about, it can be really daunting. It often leads to this perception that the operational overhead outweighs the security benefit, at least for some organizations.
Makes sense. It sounds hard.
It can be hard manually.
Yeah.
But this is precisely where automated solutions are starting to make a real difference. Companies like Signal Labs, for instance, are directly tackling that operational overhead
So,
by building tools and appliances that automate the tricky parts, making robust DNSSEC much more practical to actually deploy and maintain, even in large, complex infrastructures.
okay, so automation is key. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for you, our listeners, as cybersecurity professionals and IT leaders. The theory behind DNSSEC is clear. We know complexity is a barrier. But for a CISO or an IT director, the practical question is always, okay, great, but how do I actually implement this efficiently?
Right. How do I do it without breaking things?
Exactly. Especially across those critical external zones that, represent my company to the entire world.
That's where this concept of defense in depth becomes so crucial. Organizations like Signal Labs, they advocate for a comprehensive approach. They recognize that no single technology, not even DNSSEC, can solve all threats.
No silver bullets.
No silver bullets. Their philosophy emphasizes combining DNSSEC with other vital security measures. Things like DNS firewalls, maybe Anycast for DDoS mitigation, robust access controls, continuous monitoring.
Layering defenses.
Precisely. It's about building multiple layers of resilience, ensuring that even if one layer somehow gets breached or bypassed, others are still there to protect you.
Makes sense. So specifically for automating the DNSSEC signing part, especially for those crucial external authoritative zones, what do solutions like Signal Labs offer?
Okay, so they have specialized solutions. For instance, their Sapphire SX series appliances, these are specifically designed for securing your public-facing DNS presence.
Built for this purpose.
Exactly. And the real game changer here is their focus on fully automated key generation, zone signing, and importantly, the critical zone maintenance functions.
Automating the hard parts.
Totally. This drastically simplifies those administrative tasks that are usually quite complex and error-prone when done manually. Things like zone signing key or ZSK and key signing key, KSK, creation and rollover, it handles that.
The key lifecycle management.
Right. These appliances also support standards like PKCSSHAC 11.
It's a standard crypto API that allows for extremely secure storage of the private cryptographic keys on dedicated hardware devices. Usually hardware security modules or HSMs.
Storing keys in a secure vault.
Kind of, yeah. It adds a crucial physical layer of key security. So essentially, these appliances can be deployed as primary servers for your signed zones, and they feed that validated signed information out to your authoritative slave DNS servers.
Okay, so it signs it securely and automatically. What about the validation side for internal users?
Good question. Beyond just external zone signing, Signal Labs Sapphire DNS appliances and also their IP control system, they support DNSSEC validation for your internal recursive servers.
So your internal network can check signatures too. Exactly. What's particularly useful here is that IP control simplifies the configuration of automatically rolling trust anchors like the root zone's public key, which changes periodically.
Automates keeping that up to date.
Yes, which streamlines the entire management process for your DNSSEC validating recursive servers. It ensures your internal resolvers can reliably verify the authenticity and integrity of DNS data, whether it's for internal resources or external lookups. This is really key for maintaining internal network integrity.
And managing all these appliances and possibly other DNS servers, how does that work?
That's where Signal Labs' IP control system really shines. For central management, it provides a web graphical interface, a GUI, and also a robust REST API.
API for automation.
Right, for centralizing the configuration, the monitoring, and the management of all your deployed Sapphire DNS appliances. And what's quite powerful is that it can also manage native Microsoft DNS and ISC bind-in DNS servers.
So heterogeneous environments too.
Yeah, which drastically helps reduce configuration errors and promotes consistency across diverse environments. That saves your team countless hours and, frankly, a lot of potential headaches.
Centralized control is always good.
Definitely. So for IT directors and CSASOs, the message is pretty clear. The sheer complexity of manual DNSSEC implementation and key management, that's long been a significant barrier. But these automated solutions directly address that operational overhead.
They make it feasible.
They make robust DNSSEC practical to deploy and maintain, even in large, complex infrastructures. It transforms what felt like a daunting, risky task into something much more manageable.
Okay. Now let's connect all of this back to your role listening in as cybersecurity experts and IT leaders responsible for your company's external presence. Why is it absolutely critical to sign those external zones for public validation? What's the bottom line?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say it's about protecting your brand and your reputation.
Back to reputation.
Absolutely. As we saw with cases like MyTheirWallet, DNS hijacking incidents can lead to direct financial losses, operational disruption. It's messy.
Yeah.
But beyond the immediate financial hit, studies consistently show that a significant percentage, I think one study found 31% of attacked companies suffer severe reputational harm.
That erodes trust.
Completely erodes consumer and partner trust, and that can potentially impact your market valuation, customer loyalty, everything. Signing your external zones publicly ensures that when customers, partners, or even your own remote employees query for your website or your email servers, they receive verifiable, authentic information.
Proof it's really you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It fundamentally safeguards your digital identity and maintains that vital trust. It's about ensuring your digital front door is always verified as yours and not some imposter's.
And beyond reputation, there's compliance too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It also plays a huge role in compliance and overall risk management. Adopting DNSSEC aligns with broader compliance mandates under regulations and frameworks like GDPR, the NIST cybersecurity framework.
Things auditors look for.
Increasingly, yes. These frameworks are recognizing DNS as a critical element for business continuity and security. So by securing your external DNS with DNSSEC, you significantly reduce the overall organizational risk associated with your public digital footprint. It's really a proactive, prudent step in a landscape where these vulnerabilities are constantly being sought out and exploited.
It's becoming table stakes almost.
It really is. At the end of the day, it's not just about preventing one specific type of attack. It's much broader. It's about safeguarding your entire digital identity and ensuring continuous, trusted business operations in a landscape where DNS is, frankly, an increasingly attractive and common target for malicious actors. It's about building trust byte by byte.
Well said. Okay, we've certainly unpacked a lot today. We've seen the sheer criticality of DNSSEC through some compelling, frankly worrying real-world examples.
Definitely sobering.
We've understood its core function in preventing some really prevalent exploits, and we've explored how practical, automated solutions can actually simplify its implementation for those most critical external zones.
Making it achievable.
Exactly. So maybe a final thought to leave you with. In a world where virtually every digital interaction begins with a DNS lookup, and the integrity of that lookup is absolutely paramount for your business's external presence, your brand, your reputation.
Everything relies on it.
Is your organization truly verifiable and secure out there without a robust DNSSEC strategy in place?
Yeah.
That's definitely a question worth pondering for every CSO and IT leader.
A critical question.
Indeed. If this deep dive has sparked further questions for you, or perhaps if you're ready to discuss how to secure your DNS infrastructure with a comprehensive defense-in-depth approach,
Taking that next step.
you can explore solutions like those from Signal Labs and even schedule a demo by visiting www.signallabs.com. That's www.d.t-cygnalabs.com.